The journey begins. Kept thinking about what I could do to make some little bit of a difference. I spoke to a Korean friend of mine and she said, you know what? No one has these scooters in Korea, like you'll really stand out. So I booked the time off work and went. One of the slurs that is thrown at vegans is that vegans are weak. That is why I wanted this challenge to be physical. So all of this I've done on here. And then I've just got this section to do. I wanted to do that to bring awareness for animals, for dogs, for cows, for pigs, for chickens, for all animals. I could hear dogs barking and I knew they'd either be in a cage or they'd be on a chain. I knew they'd be in bad conditions. It was some dogs I'd seen in this very rural setting. They were in a cage and they had no shelter. And I sort of said, I made them a promise. I said, I can't take you with me now, but I'll come back. I'll come back for you somehow. I think when I finish this trip, I'm gonna have to try and go back, do something. And it just then evolved from awareness into a rescue mission to try and save the dogs that I met along the way. Eventually, this rescue group went, and I went with them, and we found the owners. To see dogs that, you know, a week or so ago, I'd spoke to them and said, I'll be back, and all of a sudden it happened, and we got them out of those cages, and we knew then that they would never be in a cage again, and that they would be safe. Many people would never dream of eating their dog, or eating their kitten, or eating their hamster, or eating their little rabbit that they've got, but yet think nothing of eating a pig or a cow. I think it's then looking at your pets, looking at animals around you, and then connecting the dots. And all of a sudden you realize the chicken is no different to your dog. The pig is no different. You have to look at your own actions. You know, you have to align your actions with your beliefs. We're doing something equally as barbaric every day here. One person can make a huge difference. A person who saves one life saves the whole world, and that's true. One person taking one single piece of action, you've altered destiny for that living being. And I know if I was in a cage, I would want one person to come and set me free.
I am thrilled to introduce our guest on today's podcast, Rich Adams, better known as Rich the Vegan, a prominent animal rights activist and all-around animal hero who bravely did the first ever scooterathon. I'm not even sure if that's a word, but I'm using it. Back in 2018 across South Korea, 394 miles traveled on a kick scooter, no less, in an effort to raise awareness on the horrors of the dog meat trade. Rich did it again in 2019, this time across Canada. From the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific, this epic 4,000 plus mile journey made Rich the first ever person to accomplish such a trip, unsupported, on a kick scooter. And his unique story has been captured and made into a full-length documentary film called Pushing for Hope, soon to be released, I hope. To call Rich an animal hero is an understatement. Rich lived in South Korea for a few years, where he worked as a teacher at a local university. It was during his time there that he first discovered the dog meat trade and had his vegan awakening with the help of his fellow teacher and previous podcast guest, Kevin Lahey. So welcome to the show, Rich.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here. Thank you.
Well, I'm so glad you accepted my invitation because, you know, your epic mile journey twice, you know, is very, very inspiring. And I'm just, you know, dying to hear more about the thought process, the planning of these challenges, because they are challenges, and your experiences in South Korea. and your advocacy work, obviously, for the victims of the dog meat trade. Dog cat meat trade. I always say dog cats because most of Southeast Asia, it involves both. But I believe from my conversation, South Korea is mostly dogs. I mean, they don't have a big cat meat trade in that country.
Not that I am aware of. No, it's mostly the dogs.
Yeah. Okay. So obviously we have a lot to cover today, but I always like to have a little bit of an idea of how and what made you go to South Korea in the first place. And, can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, it's a bit of a wild story, I guess. I'd just finished doing a master's degree, and I wanted to teach.
And we should say that you're originally from the UK, I believe.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, with the accent kind of gives it away. But what part of the UK are you from?
So I'm from Leicester, which is a city right in the middle of England.
Okay.
And so I grew up in Leicester, and at the time I'd finished my master's degree and I wanted to teach, but I really wanted to get away. And it was really funny because I'd finished my teaching qualification, and it was like a Friday night, and I went online and I just saw this ad pop up for South Korea teaching. And so I applied on the Saturday, and literally a week later, I was flying out to South Korea just by email. I really didn't know where I was going. I just had a suitcase.
Oh my God.
And I just got on a plane, and when I got there, a nice gentleman had my name on the card.
Wow.
And that was it. So it was a bit of an adventure getting on that plane, not knowing where I was going.
Wow.
I didn't know anything about the school. I knew nothing. So
and the ad, well. Where did you see the ad? Was it like part of your school programs?
No, I can't remember exactly where I saw it now. It was a long time ago, but I remember just going on, and I don't know whether I'd maybe Googled teaching abroad or something. But yeah, this ad was quite prominent.
And how many years ago was this? Well, in what year? In what year? It might be easier.
This was 2006.
Oh, okay. So that was earlier than I thought. Because I know I spoke to Kevin, and I think he went there in 2010, but maybe he was there before. Yeah, he probably was there before, because he started his investigations 2010, 2012, those years. Yeah. So, okay, so you're very impulsive. And how did your family react? Like, were they afraid for you because this is like a foreign country, foreign language?
I was 25 at the time.
Okay.
And I think my family know me quite well by now. That I'm pretty independent and pretty stubborn.
Yeah.
So they knew I was going. And it
couldn't change your mind.
No, I left school. Originally, I left school and I was 16 and I left school. And then I went back to education in my 20s, and that's when I did my master's. But yeah, so I think my family were well aware of me and my independence.
Rich does whatever he wants. There's no, contradicting him. And can I think you probably said it, but what was your master's in? Like what field?
So I did my master's in ancient history. And I wanted to be a history teacher. And
nice.
So that was kind of where my interest laid, was in archaeology and ancient history. So I did the classics, kind of Greek and Roman history.
Wow, that's interesting. So it kind of gave you a little bit of background as for Korea, like, because that's part of my questions, and maybe you're actually able to answer some of those questions about the history. But before we get into that, I just so you arrive in South Korea, somebody obviously puts you up, right? Like, so were you living in your own apartment, or how did that work out?
No, so when we arrived, there was I guess a group of us, a couple people had arrived before me, and we were up in this really swanky hotel and in Seoul, and it was great. It was like a
Wow.
floor, floor to ceiling windows looking out over Seoul. It was great. And then
Wow.
we did this teacher training for a week.
Okay.
And so yeah, I'd really thought I'd hit the jackpot, but then
Yeah, that is pretty cool.
very cool. But then we later discovered that the school we were going to be teaching in hadn't been built, and so we had nowhere to stay. So
Oh no.
we ended up living in a love motel, which, if people aren't familiar with Asia,
I heard about that. I
yeah,
heard it in Japan. I didn't know
yeah,
they had some in South Korea.
they're great. They're great. They're basically, I mean, for probably people in Western countries, they're kind of motels where you can rent the room by the hour.
Yeah. We understand what's implied there, but so they put you up there. So you were in a
Yeah,
swanky hotel for the first week or so? Or?
yeah, for the first week, and then we got moved to this love motel, which was really fun because there was a lot of us. I'm not sure if there was maybe 20 or more of us,
Mm,
and so it was quite. For me, it was a really good experience.
yeah.
I guess local Koreans who'd probably wanted to get away with their loved one probably
Yes.
thought it was a bit odd because they had to pass this gauntlet of
Of
foreign
weird
speakers.
foreigners are like, what is going on here? But can I ask, like, how many you were saying? About 20, all like, Americans or Westerners going there to teach English as a second language, I'm assuming?
Yeah. So it was a whole mixed group.
Okay.
I think I was the only Brit at the time,
Mm,
but we had majority were Americans, and then a lot of Canadians. I think there was a couple of Australians, maybe one person from New Zealand,
okay.
but I was the only Brit. Typically, in England, I believe a lot of the British people, they will either go to Japan or China typically. And I know that
Mm.
South Korea, I learned this afterwards, that South Korea was more the destination for Canadians and Americans.
Oh, okay. Well, that kind of makes sense. I know I dated someone who taught English in Japan as a
Yes.
second language, and he was like, wanting to defy his family. They had a family business he didn't want to join, and he said, "Listen, I'm just going to go off and do this thing in Japan." And they thought, "Oh, he's like a loser. He's not going to amount to anything in life." But as it turns out, he met his future business partner there, and he went on to do amazing business. And he was very successful. So you never know, what one decision will lead to another one, and a lot of opportunities can come from that. So sometimes it's good to be a bit impulsive.
It is.
Uh,
And for me, I kind of looked at it as being a professional because, I'd done my master's degree and then I'd done my teaching qualifications as well. And
yeah,
so I kind of looked at it that, I was there to teach as a teacher.
of course.
I'd done a master's and I'd done my teaching certificates. I know that there are some people who maybe view it as just like a gap year or something fun to do. But for me, I viewed it, as a professional, and I
Well,
really,
especially because you had aspirations to become a teacher,
yeah, yeah,
historical history teacher. So you were seeing it as a stepping stone towards this career as a teacher, which,
yeah.
it turns out that you did not pursue that, but we'll get to that a little bit later. So my question for you next is, obviously you're in South Korea,
Yes.
2006. How long did you stay there?
I was there for a long time. It was, it was a long time. I was there. I came back
Yeah,
to England, then went back again. So yeah, it was getting on for
four.
the best part of a decade, nearly. I was there for
Oh,
a long
wow.
time.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And was Kevin part of the initial group of teachers? or?
No, so I met Kevin. So Kevin Lahey, he's the gentleman that really turned me vegan, and I met him at a secondary job that I had there,
Okay.
where I was teaching at a university, and Kevin was on the faculty there as well, and we had cubicles next to each other
Okay.
in our little kind of horseshoe corral
Yeah.
there. And so, yeah, we would talk. And at the time, it's funny because it's quite embarrassing, really. I think I would ask Kevin all the questions that are very stereotypical. I'd say, where do you get your protein from?
Oh,
And
yeah.
I
Because
guess at
he
the
was already
beginning,
vegan at the time,
yeah,
I think. Yeah.
he'd gone vegan. So
Yeah.
we would talk about this, and yeah, it's pretty embarrassing, really. I think I was kind of quite mocking in a way.
Yeah. Well,
He
that's,
said I wasn't, but I felt like maybe I was, now looking back.
yeah.
And I just thought, oh, it's way out there. But
Yeah.
obviously those conversations, you don't realize it, even if the person isn't making the connection or clicking straight away. Those conversations do have an impact.
Yeah. It makes its way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I agree with that. That's why I always say, there's always an opportunity to do outreach, even if the person doesn't seem receptive to your ideas. It's good to talk about it in a respectful manner. I always say, like, don't bully people, don't, mock them or, be aggressive, because I think that cuts the conversation for sure. But you never know. It's going to make its way eventually. And, next thing you know, that person is thinking about it, and it catches up to them, and they make that decision for themselves. So, at what point, like, you arrived in South Korea 2006, obviously new experiences, and when did you uncover that the country had a massive dog meat trade?
So I'd heard about it, and it's something, we had obviously Korean teachers there and Korean colleagues, and
Yeah.
I'd spoken to them about it. And
did you know about it before going to South Korea, or did you discover it over there?
No, I discovered it when I was over there.
Yeah.
And it's kind of embarrassing, really, because, coming from a Western culture to going somewhere that views animals differently, or certain animals differently,
Yeah.
and has a different diet. I guess initially looking at the food that was eaten there, it was a novelty. So whether that was, little bugs or whatever it was, octopus,
Yeah.
dogs, and really it was kind of viewed as a bit of a novelty. And I remember speaking to the Koreans about it, and they said, yeah, it's a special breed. And I never imagined, I guess because I'd never even thought about the animals I was eating. I'd never thought about cows or chickens.
No.
So it just didn't dawn on me the horror and the absolute hell that those animals were in.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's embarrassing, really, because I wasn't reflecting. And it was only Kevin that made me reflect on that.
Yeah.
And I remember one day, he can't remember this. We've spoke about this, but he can't remember this. But one day he showed me a video, and he'd obviously started his activism.
Yeah.
And he showed me this video, and it was a dog that was being hanged. And so they put this rope around this dog's neck, and then they pulled it up over I guess a beam in the roof.
Yeah.
And so as and they're pulling, and as the dog's going up, the dog was hanging there, and the dog put its paws over the rope to try and pull down on the rope so it could breathe. And it makes me want to cry now. And at the time, that was just horrific. And what it was, it to me, it was a very human action.
Yeah. Yeah.
The same way as if someone was putting a rope around my neck.
You would try to stop it. Yeah.
I would try to grab it.
Yeah.
And I remember, looking at that video, and, it makes me makes me sad now, makes me tear up, because it really broke my heart. And what it did was it showed me that these animals,
They
think and
feel,
feel.
yeah.
And I remember I kind of came away and I spoke to some Koreans. And I remember one Korean in particular I spoke to. I said, why do you do this? This is barbaric. This is horrific.
Yeah.
And they turned around and they said, don't judge us because you eat pigs, cows, chickens.
Yeah.
There's no difference.
Right.
And I guess this is, the humorous side of it. Me being so stubborn.
Yeah.
I just said, you know what? Okay, then. I'm not going to eat those animals to try and win the argument.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
okay. So literally from that day, I just said, okay, then I'm not going to eat animals.
Wow.
And so that was kind of my step because of Kevin. Those conversations and seeing that video and then talking to a Korean who really
pointed out the hypocrisy, right? Yeah.
And I was being a complete hypocrite, but I'd never had that moment of self-reflection.
Yeah.
And because whenever you point at someone, you get the other fingers pointing back at you.
Yeah.
And so from that day, I literally cut animal flesh out of my diet. I just said, I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
Just like that. Yeah.
And would you say that was like 2008 at that point, or like?
No, that was later. That was around 2009.
Okay.
Something like that, around 2009, 2010, around there.
But what you've experienced is like anyone else. Like, honestly, people don't reflect. They don't think about what's on their plate. It's societal norms that pigs, cows, and chickens are food and dogs are companion animals in the West. Like, this is what we were raised and brought in. And, to be fair, dogs and cats were never bred to be food. Like there's animal husbandry that's been going on for 15, 20,000 years, and dogs were never part of that history. So yeah, I always say it's normal, like that people are outraged to see this being done to dogs because it's like a family member, for most people. And the truth of the matter is they have not seen the conditions of pigs, cows, and chickens and the slaughtering process. These people don't look at that. They're not activists, they haven't seen it. And so when you do see it, then there's it's going to have a reaction in people, like not normally, you would hope. I know it did for me. And I was very young when I became vegan. I was like decades ago, like over 3 decades ago. And there was no one like you, like it was not something that was popular. There was no vegans. I grew up in a small town and there was no vegans that I knew of. But it's seeing my friend, luckily, she had a sister that was a member of PETA. Although she was a member of PETA, she was, as far as I know, she was not vegan. But she gave us this VHS tape at the time. And my girlfriend came, she would always come and visit me on weekends. And she said, oh, my sister told us we should watch this. I said, well, okay. And I had no idea what it was. And, it was 5 minutes of seeing, I think it was cows, like slaughterhouse footage of cows being slaughtered. And, like my reaction was visceral. It was like, oh my God, I was horrified. I couldn't watch. And for me, that moment, it was like, I'm done. And we vowed that we would never, ever eat meat again or, animal products. And it was like overnight, I even threw out all my leather. I was like horrified, but I seen it, like a lot of people don't see it. They don't have that opportunity. And I would have never had it if it wasn't for my friend bringing that VHS. I would have stayed dormant and, blind to animal pain and suffering for years later, so it's, you have to give people the opportunity, to find out, to become aware and to make better decisions, so you
do, and that's deliberate, that as I know now,
the animal agriculture industry, they do that deliberately. They deliberately conceal and hide.
Yes.
And, I look back on, I guess, people like you. I remember I had a cousin, back in the 80s, I guess, who was vegetarian for these reasons.
Yeah.
But, and I really look back on people who did that, I guess, kind of pre-internet or, pre-smartphone.
Pre-internet is right.
Yeah. Because that must have taken a huge amount of courage, because most people were not on board with that. And even for me, going back to those, mid to late 2000s, this was before smartphones.
Yeah.
And when you look back now, it's not that long ago, but it seems like a different lifetime. And the information just wasn't there. And so even for me, in my, I guess, ignorance, I just didn't know these things, even though the internet was there, but it wasn't so accessible as it is now. When it's, the phone is in your hand, there really is no excuse now.
The information is out there for sure.
Yeah.
Like I always say, like, people have it easy because there's so many more products available now. When I became vegan, I was soya milk. There was no other milk, and it was disgusting. But like, and coffee and everything. And so I'm like, you guys have it easy. To my young activist friends, I'm like, you should not complain. But also, I do make a point of telling people that you have to be careful about your nutrition, because I became sick. Like you said, there was no information. I was the odd man out, like no one around me to guide me. And I ate rice and vegetables and cookies and dates, and I became sick, because I was 15 and my nutritional needs were not being met. And I became, grossly anemic. I was like a candidate for osteoporosis. So I always say, be careful, inform yourself, be smart, because the last thing you want is to portray a vegan that's sick. Then you give everyone the right to say, see, I told you, you can't be vegan. It's not good for you. So I always say B12. This is the important one. Take your B12, and I take a supplement every day, and also iron. Be very careful, especially as a woman. So that was my problem at the time, but now I'm like, there's no reason not to be super healthy being vegan. If, in fact, I would say, in order to be healthy, you should eat plant-based, right? So, and not animal products. So that's something.
And it's the other way around, because when you look at the vitamin industry, this is a multi-billion-dollar industry aimed at people who eat animals. And it's the same way, if you just ate burgers and chips every day, you're
not going to be healthy. Yeah, exactly.
So it isn't just the being vegan, like you say, it's having that balanced diet. My partner Kathy is very good. I really I don't watch what I eat, and I'll tell you what I ate on the Canada trip. But my partner Kathy is very good. She'll give me the vitamin D and the vitamin B12.
Okay, good.
Every day. Yeah.
You gotta take those smoothies. She's got your best interest at heart. It's super important. Okay, so let's move on to well, before we move on to your first scooterathon, I do want to ask you, like, okay, so you arrived there in 2006. It must have been a culture shock. And was it your first trip in Asia? That was my question.
Yeah, it was. And I guess somewhere subconsciously, I wanted to go to Asia, but like I say, a lot of British people, they will typically go to Japan or China, and I wanted to do something different. And just that ad popped up. I'd never thought about South Korea, but it popped up. But I guess also studying the classics, and especially Rome, and the impact Rome had on Britain. It and Europe, I should say, and the impact that Rome has had indirectly on most Western countries, whether that's Australia, New Zealand, America, Canada, just that the impact that it had had on Britain, and then Britain's impact on these other countries. When you trace those back, a lot of their roots and heritage was in kind of Roman philosophy and Roman law. So for me, getting out of that and getting to Asia, where you're not walking, in England, when you walk down a road, typically that's a road that was built by the Romans.
Yeah.
And it was used by the indigenous population prior to that. But a lot of the roads that we use now were built by the Romans. So getting to South Korea, you sit back and go, well, I've just done a master's degree in kind of, Roman history, and it has virtually no significance here.
No.
So it was a culture shock, definitely.
Yeah, right. And I guess you were there long enough that you must have built some long-lasting friendships that yeah.
This is one of the things that I always found very confusing, and something that was very juxtaposed was that on one hand, the Koreans I met were pretty incredible people. They'd been through a lot. They'd been through the Korean War in the 50s, and they'd rebuilt their country. And I was seeing this warmth and this openness. And then on the other hand, you've got this extreme barbarity and this absolute cruelty shown to other living beings. And I could never, and I still can't to this day, I still can't come to terms with that in my mind, because the Korean people I meet are incredible. And especially the activists now who fight against the dog meat trade there. These are absolutely incredibly brave people. Yeah. And so it was always something I struggled with and still struggle with to this day.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I feel the same way about, some of the Chinese activists I've come to know. It's they're some of the most dedicated, compassionate people you'll ever meet. And to think of what happens in that country, they had no reason to be compassionate towards animals. They have no animal welfare laws, and police routinely beat dogs to death in public streets. So you're exposed to that as a child, and it must have its impact, like psychological impact on you. It becomes like a society that's so desensitized to animal pain, but there's some amazing people. And so I'm always inspired, like it's all hope is not lost, so long as there are good people out there willing, to make a difference. I think we stand a chance to make this world a better place.
And it's something, I think I've said it before, but are they being more honest? That's always a question I ask is, well, are they being more honest than, say, people in Britain? Because in Britain, we draw a line. So we'd say, okay, cows, pigs, chickens, turkeys, that's okay. Here's a line. Certain rabbits, pet rabbits, not wild rabbits, but pet rabbits, dog, cats, they're off limits. Yeah. And when I was in Asia, and obviously I traveled to other Asian countries. Okay. There is an exploitation there that I had never seen with animals. Mm-hmm. But maybe somehow in a twisted way it's more truthful, because there isn't that differentiation.
Right. They put them all in the same category. Like, so
I'm struggling to say that word, but there isn't a difference. It's just everything is kind of fair game. If you can catch it, if it crawls, if it flies, if it creeps, if you can catch it and eat it, so be it.
Yeah, well, on that front, like I have to say that I do, I've come to really appreciate the fact that we have animal welfare laws, and I grew up in a country where we do put a certain limit. If it was all fair game, then I wouldn't probably be vegan. I probably would have seen my father kill dogs or kill cows, chickens, and it would have become, routine and normal. So I really do appreciate the fact that we do have animal welfare laws, as much as we complain about them and that they're too lax, they're not severe enough. And I agree. we have room to go. But it's when you hear the stories that come out of China, you're like, oh my God, it's horrific. It's like, yeah, we could not live in a country like that. I'm telling you, like what I've come to know from my Chinese activist friends, and they send me videos and I'm like, it's like, there has to be a limit, there has to be a certain, like, decorum around animals. I mean, yeah, so if dogs and cats are considered companion animals, and if that makes us hypocrites, well, at least we have a certain discernment around animals. Whereas if it's free game, then we'd all be a society full of cruel, careless, heartless people around animals. So I think it's good. And I often say dogs and cats, like for those that fight the dog cat meat trade but still eat meat, it's the first, step towards becoming more compassionate towards all animals, because we've grown up with dogs, you get to know a dog, you form a bond with a dog. And then if you visit a farm sanctuary, for example, you'll get to recognize that same sentience in other animals, and it opens you up. Whereas if dogs were always considered, same thing, I think that would be a bigger problem. I honestly do.
It's something I struggle with, because, you're definitely right, and that's one thing that the dogs are good. They're definitely, it makes it accessible to people.
Yeah.
I think, again, I don't have the answers, but one thing I do know is, we have these animal welfare laws, but it's just a facade. That's one thing I really struggle with. Like in Canada here.
Yeah.
There's supposed to be regulations on transporting animals to slaughter.
Yeah.
But they're still going to slaughter. And so it's something I struggled with there. And it's one of the questions I said, well, are they more truthful and honest because they just say, well, we don't generally care about animals?
Yeah.
Or, are we being the hypocrites, and are we wrong because we put these laws in place, but ultimately we're still doing the same action? I don't know. I struggle with it. And it's something, as I've evolved, I've learned more, and even here learning about horses and the horse trade. It's so difficult, But I think you're right. Definitely, the dogs, certainly to people in the West, I think, enable you to connect, because you can see that animal in your home.
Yeah, exactly.
Live with that animal.
Imagine if we didn't even have that, and also, yes, I agree with you. Like, especially for farm animals, the welfare laws we have are like nothing. It doesn't make a difference for them, for sure. And we have so much room to grow, but at least we have, like, if a dog was beaten to death in the streets, for sure that person would be, apprehended, and there'd be some consequences, and that dog would be nowhere to be found near that person. So that's what I mean. Like, there are certain laws, and we do have a certain amount of respect for certain animals as a society. Still a lot of room to grow, but I think that's important. It's an important thing, and I think it's going to lead us to the right, in the right direction eventually, hopefully. But now let's take a deep dive into the first time you decided to do this, epic journey. And this time it was in 2018. So at that point, I'm curious to know, were you living in South Korea when you decided to do this first scooterathon? Or were you back to England?
No, so I was actually in Canada. And
okay.
Yeah. So
can I ask you, what made you move to Canada? Was it a woman?
No. So really, I was in a very good job there in Korea, teaching at a university.
Yeah.
But for the reasons you stated, the animal cruelty, I just said, I can't live here, because I can't walk down the street and see dogs in cages outside a dog meat restaurant. I can't be exposed to this, and like you say, there was a lack of caring on some aspects, a little lack of empathy there for animals. And I just said, I can't do this. So it had always been I guess, a childhood dream of mine to live in the Rocky Mountains.
Oh, yeah.
By trade, I'm an arborist. So
Right.
by trade, when I left school, that's what I got into, was working with trees. And so I'd always been very attracted to Canada, and it had always been a dream to live in the Rockies and work
Yeah.
with trees. So yeah, at that point, I'd left Korea and had emigrated to Canada.
Wow. Okay, so what made you decide to do the scooterathon, and how did the idea come about? And how did you go about planning it?
When I left Korea, I always thought about the dogs.
Yeah.
And I was always thinking, what can I do to help? And there was times there where I guess I contributed to animal suffering. There was times there where maybe I could have helped and I didn't. And I guess I carried that guilt with me very heavily.
Okay.
And I would wake up, I really remember waking up in the mornings, and I'd been dreaming about dogs, and I just had this guilt for, I guess, the things I'd done and the things I'd not done. And I thought, I've got to help. I've got to do something. And I thought, okay, well, what can I do? I don't have much money. I thought, but maybe I could do some kind of physical challenge. So I thought about, could I walk or run across Korea? Because a couple of years earlier, I walked across England. So I
Okay.
thought, could I do something like that? And then I thought, well, I'm not sure I'm fit enough. I'm not an athlete.
Right.
And so I thought also about the time involved. I only had a couple of weeks holiday from my work. So I came up with this idea of a kid's scooter. And I thought, with the kid's scooter, I can walk or run. And then if I get to a downhill, I can get on the scooter.
Yeah.
And it will, I'll be quicker.
Yeah.
And then the idea progressed, and I thought, you're going to have this 6-foot guy with a ginger beard. Obviously, it's grey now, but at the time it was ginger.
Oh my God.
On a kid's scooter.
Yeah.
And I thought, that's got to get some attention.
Like, no one's ever done that, and especially not a 6-foot tall ginger beard man.
Yeah. So I thought, yeah. So I got the scooter, packed a backpack and booked the flights and did it.
Wow. But you had friends, you had established some friendships, I guess, in South Korea at that point. So you said, okay, I'll go visit my friend. And no?
Yes and no. I mean, yeah, I had friends in Korea, but for this, it was really, I flew. So my friends were kind of in the north of Korea around Seoul.
Okay.
But for this, I flew to Busan, which is in the south.
Ah, okay.
And I thought, I'll do this famous cycling route. And so I started in Busan. So I went on a Facebook page and just said, hey, I'm coming over. I'm going to do this trip. And I met up with a vegan there who kind of showed me like where a vegan restaurant is. And I booked a little hostel. So yeah, I arrived in Busan, and then I arrived in the night. I can't remember what day it was. But then I had like one full day, and then I would start the next day.
Oh, wow.
So I just had one day to kind of get my bearings.
Because you're jet lag, no doubt. Like, it's a long flight, right? So
yeah, it was kind of, I was pretty tired, but I thought, I've just got to get this done. I didn't have many days, and I thought, I've just got to do it. So
wow.
Yeah, I kind of met up with someone in Busan, went to a Korean traditional restaurant, which was vegan.
Okay.
And got my scooter ready, and then the next day I was gone.
Wow. And I think it lasted 14 days. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was, I think all in all, I did the trip in around 10 days. And then I had a few extra days at the tail end of it. And
Okay.
so then that's when I stayed with a friend once I got to Seoul,
Right.
and visited Jenny Kim. She's the woman who rescued the dogs for me. So I went and
Ah.
visited her and
Jimmy
the dog.
Kim, is she part of works for a nonprofit, or is she just is an independent activist that, you know?
No, she's an independent activist, and she originally was a school teacher,
Oh, okay.
and I guess got into rescuing dogs. And she has a sanctuary now.
Okay. Does
And
there a
so,
name to it? Like, can people
yeah, so it's
follow
called the
her?
Rainbow Sanctuary. Um,
Rainbow.
yeah,
Okay.
but you can find on my website, I've got links to her. And
Okay.
so originally when I went over, it was just Jenny, and she had a wonderful trainer called Jake, this
Okay.
Korean man. Again, so much compassion and love. You know, he'd lived with dogs, and
Wow.
he was, without a shadow of a doubt, the best dog handler and trainer I've ever seen. He,
Wow.
you know, one of the dogs that we rescued was very traumatized, and in my video you can see that.
Okay.
And Jake got into the cage with this dog, not knowing whether this dog, would attack him.
Yeah.
No gloves, nothing, just got in with a little,
Wow.
rope dog leash. And he was absolutely incredible. And he said he learned this by living with some dogs in the mountains
Oh,
and understanding
wow.
their body language. And so, yeah, he really gave up everything in his life. Like that was
Wow.
his life. He didn't have a
Is he
job.
is he still part of the sanctuary, or?
Yeah, so he's still there.
Wow.
Um, and so then there was another lady called Sian Davis. She's from Wales.
Okay.
And so I literally just found these people through Facebook as I was doing the trip.
Wow.
As I was going along, I would see these dogs. And so the trip was never about rescuing dogs. It was just about getting awareness.
I could hear
Okay.
dogs barking, and I
But
knew
as
they'd either be in a
the trip
cage
would
or they'd be on a
progress,
chain.
I'd
I
see
knew
these
they'd be in bad
dogs,
conditions. There were
and
some
I'd think
dogs
I've
I'd
got to do
seen
something. And
Yeah.
so in the
slow
day I
water
would be
setting. They were in a
traveling, and
cage
then
and they
at
had no
night time
shelter.
I'd be
And I
on
sort of said, I made
the
them a
internet
promise. I
and,
said,
and
I can't
mostly
take you with me
Facebook and
now,
Yeah.
Instagram.
but I'll come back
And
Yeah.
I'd be kind of raising the
into a
flag saying, can anyone
refuge
help
to
me?
try and save
And
the
then
dogs
that's
that I
how I
met
learned
along
about
the
Jenny
way.
Kim and
Oh,
Sean.
wow. Okay, that's amazing. Well, I think the t-shirts and I think they were created just to raise awareness, like you said. And even Brigitte Bardot wore one. So Bob Heisler, I think is his name. So if people want to go check it out, like on his timeline, he posts all these photos of people wearing the t-shirt. It's just the t-shirt reads something that, dogs are superheroes, not food. And it's cute, it's quirky, but in my opinion, I always, in the back of my head, I'm like, so are other animals, but that's just my personal little thing. But the whole point is just to help raise awareness about the dog meat trade. And so your goal when you book that flight and you decide to sacrifice your vacation time for this, because let's be fair, it's your whole vacation time, it was really to raise awareness. And do you feel like it attracted like both local and international media coverage, or like?
I guess that was my fault, really. Looking back now, I didn't really advertise what I was doing. And at the
Right.
time, I didn't want to do that because for several reasons. One, I wasn't sure if I'd be able to complete the trip. So I didn't want
Okay.
to say, hey, I'm doing this, and then for whatever
Yeah,
reason, it
yeah,
not
you're like,
happen.
then I'm accountable, and if it doesn't work out, I'll look like a fool. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the second reason was I was kind of worried about the dog meat traders, because these are brutal people, and very much it's like the mafia. They earn a lot
Yeah.
of money from this.
Yes.
And, I thought, I'm going to South Korea alone. I'm going to be on this pathway that kind of runs through the mountains
Yeah.
alone.
Alone. Yeah.
And I
You
thought it
don't
wouldn't
want to
take much.
be joined by the mafia.
No, and I just thought it wouldn't take much. If a few of these dog traders got together, because they, when you see how brutal they are to other Koreans and to the animals, they want to protect their money and their livelihood.
Yeah.
And so I thought it wouldn't take much. And,
if they would see you as a threat, absolutely.
At best, I could be beaten up. At worst, who knows? I could have disappeared. So, I thought I've got to also protect myself. So I thought I'll do this trip and then promote it.
Yeah.
And so that was my thinking behind it. In hindsight now, I wished I would have contacted the media there and promoted it more, definitely.
At the risk of your own safety?
Yeah, I wish I'd have done that.
Maybe at the tail end of it, when you're done, when you're not in the woods alone.
And just to kind of highlight how brutal these people are. So when I finished the trip, I remember I finished the trip, and the next day there was a protest in Seoul about the dog meat trade, and politicians were saying, we're going to try and ban this. And so just to show how brutal these dog meat traders are, they brought a load of dogs in cages into the center of Seoul. So this is, the equivalent of going downtown New York, downtown London, downtown Toronto. They brought these dogs in cages. They brought gasoline with them. And they said, we will pour gasoline over these dogs and burn them alive if you make this law. Then there was a protest where some of the activists turned up.
Yeah.
And these dog meat traders were saying, we're going to kill you. We will kill you. And these brave activists, and I there's men and women, but I'm going to say the majority are women.
Okay.
One of the women who I met later, she was there, and in front of the cameras, those TV cameras there, and she stood up against these men.
Yes.
And she said, kill me now. She said, come on, kill me now. If you want to kill me now, because we're in front of the cameras, and then the whole world will see what you're like.
Yeah.
And that bravery, and so it makes me think maybe I should have been a braver, and maybe I should have pushed it more with the media at the time. But I mean, what an extremely brave woman. She lives there, and these people, they can find out who she is, they can find out where she lives.
Exactly. I'd be more worried about the aftermath, because probably wouldn't do it in plain daylight. It is a crime, right? So they would go to jail. But like she was like just gonna play it up to them and say, listen, if you want to kill me, go ahead, but that took a lot of bravery. And it's so, I just clicked, because you say you were there in what month of 2018? Like, was it in the summer or?
No, so it was around May when I went.
In May, okay. Was it at the same time? Because in 2018, they had the world's largest dog meat protests. And it was happening in South Korea, in Seoul. Simultaneously, it was happening in San Francisco and LA and Chicago and all across, major cities. And I think it was organized by Last Chance for Animals. Were you aware? Did you witness that?
No, I wasn't aware of that.
Okay.
No, that's incredible.
Yeah, no, it was the world's largest dog meat protest, and actually had one of the, because Last Chance for Animals, they basically sponsor and support a local Korean young lady, and they call themselves Animal Liberation Wave. And so I had her on my podcast, and we got to talk about that, because she was there. Obviously, she's the one who organized that protest locally. They had Kim Basinger as a spokesperson in Korea. It was a big deal. And, and at the time, they seemed to have a lot of promise from politicians that they were going to outlaw it. Still hasn't happened, but on that note, are you hopeful that this next election, which is, I think, March 9th, that they're going to swear in a new president in South Korea? Do you believe that we're going to see some changes from the new?
I hope so. I mean, that demonstration could have happened later in the year, because typically during Boknal, during the hottest months,
Yeah.
that's when obviously the dog meat trade, that's kind of their peak. And so
Yeah.
that's typically in Korea when a lot of activists will come over from Western countries to
I
help out.
believe it was around that time that they did the protests, and they did it again in 2019. But, I think there's one candidate that is saying that he would ban the dog meat. We're not sure if it's going to happen, if he's going to win, but, hopefully his platform has a lot more than just that. Obviously I'm not familiar, but I think you would agree that the majority of Koreans at this point are against it. Would you say?
Yeah, I think eventually it will end. Every evil and every horror ends.
Yeah.
And a lot of politicians do say they're going to try to end it.
Mm-hmm.
And they do take steps. And as you talked about earlier with the lack of animal welfare laws, one of the ways they try to combat this is, rather than tackling it head on, they will try and circumvent and say, okay, what can we do? Well, we can get people in regards to sanitation, in regards to running restaurants, in regards to cleaning. And so what they'll do is they will try to use other laws, existing laws, to, if you like, sidestep and tackle these restaurants or these slaughterhouses. I think it will end. From my experience, the younger generation is a lot more awake to this. They're not necessarily interested in dog meat anymore.
No.
It seems to be it's a lot of the older generation. So that would be typically people, middle-aged upwards.
Yeah.
And so I find as times change, as these people eventually just through life will, get old and die.
Yeah.
And then the younger generation starts coming into positions of power, then I think things will change. And so I think it definitely will end. And currently, from my understanding, a lot of people in politics, whether they be in local municipal government or higher, some of them are involved in the dog meat trade. And the dog meat traders, they lobby politicians because there's a huge amount of money to be made. So I think it will end. It's just a question of we have to let this younger generation come in.
Yeah. And I have to say that what you're saying is exactly what I've heard time and again from other guests. And I'm talking about Nami Kim. I've interviewed her and she said the same thing. She's like, Jay gave it 20 years. But no one wants to wait 20 years, of course, but I think we'll see some progress, and certainly South Korea offers up some more hope in a way, because it's a democratic political system, so you elect the officials, and the more people become aware and are sensitized to the issue, I think, they stand a chance of, putting at least, like you said, hindering the trade to the point that it's less profitable, less attractive to newcomers. And, I think also in South Korea, it's the dog meat is more of a tradition with, older men, middle-aged men, certainly it's more popular with them. And I think, like you said, the younger generation, there's something that's been talked about. I think I discussed it with Kevin, but also with Nami, is that in Korea, there is, and in Asia, I would say in general, that the children are brought up, with strict discipline and to respect your elder. I mean, that's a big thing. And in Korea, often it's the older man, the head of the family, which is typically an older man, that orders, let's say the family gets together at a restaurant, he's the one who orders for everyone. So if he decides you're eating dog meat, well, chances are you're going to eat dog meat. And it's rare that like the child will protest and go, no, I'm not going to, defy, the authority, which is the parent or the grandparent in some cases. So it's a bit of that mentality, but I think we're doing away with that even now, like in 2022, I think it's becoming less commonplace that, I think children are a little bit more independent, and I'm talking about not just children, like, young adults, they're going to have their own way of thinking and living. So I think you're right. I think there's hope.
There is hope, and you are correct in what you say. From my experience there were the two main reasons that dogs were eaten was certainly for men, they believed it gave you extra stamina in bed.
Yeah.
And then for everyone,
yeah,
for women as well, they believe that during the hottest days of the year, by eating dog, it would keep you cool. So, I think they, looking at it from my point of view, that's a very primitive way of thinking. And I think, as their society changes,
yeah,
as people are obviously getting extremely educated,
yeah,
South Korea now in education ranks is top for a lot of subjects.
sure.
And I think as there is more global influence, and as Korea is influencing the globe equally,
Yeah.
there's this exchange, and I think these myths will die off.
It sounds ridiculous because they, even in China, like Yulin Dog Meat Festival, I mean, it's a summer solstice, right? And they're like, oh, it's going to keep you cool. And then somehow it's going to keep you warm during cold winter nights, because traditionally dog meat was eaten in China before the big winter, to elevate your qi or, God knows what. But it's nonsensical. And what really troubled me is that you're like, oh, okay, it's lack of education, but even doctors prescribe dog meat to patients to better recover from surgery. And I had a laugh with that when I spoke to Kevin, because he's the one who brought it up, and he said, so if you want to run faster, you should eat cheetahs. Like, where's the logic in that? Makes no sense. And I guess you're like, it's coming from a doctor, someone who went to university and studied, so it's hard to explain that. But I guess when people have a deeply rooted belief, it's really hard to let go of that sometimes. It's really ingrained in your mindset, and it propagates, like, your father's going to tell you that, then you're going to share it with your son, and it goes on and on. But to us, it sounds like, ridiculous, of course. And so during this first scooterathon, I know that you did mention that you did end up saving a few dogs and actually flew them to America for adoption. So that was with Ginny Kim as well?
Yeah, so I rescued a few dogs. With Jenny Kim, she went and got these dogs, and some of the dogs came to Canada.
Okay, yeah.
And some of the dogs actually got adopted in Korea. And then Sean Davis actually arranged and flew some of the dogs over to America.
Wow.
Jenny still actually has two dogs that we rescued. I guess they were more traumatized.
Yeah.
So they've actually stayed with Jenny Kim at her sanctuary. And it's what do you do in this situation? Because these dogs, I don't think they could go into a family home situation.
No.
They're just too traumatized, and they, consider Jenny's sanctuary, I guess, their home now. So,
Yeah.
I've been pondering and talking to Jenny about that, saying, is it right to bring them over, or are they better off with her? But she's an amazing woman, and
Yeah.
she's kept those dogs that are traumatized, because her and Sean, they don't believe in euthanizing the dogs.
Okay.
So once
Yeah.
Jenny rescues them, she
So,
gives them a life at her sanctuary. So she has this wonderful sanctuary there, kind of in the
and
mountains.
where is it located exactly?
It's just outside of Seoul.
Okay.
And so she's kind of in the mountains there, and it used to be a little campsite, I guess. So there's
Okay.
the interesting buildings, and
Wow.
she's set up, little I guess huts and things like that for the dogs,
Yeah.
and they have a huge courtyard and areas where they can run and play, and then they can come inside in these buildings. So
Wow.
she's really set up an amazing place, and it's a good place where volunteers can go. So she does a lot of outreach where
Yeah.
university students or school students, they can
That's
come to her
good.
sanctuary.
That's good because it gets them in touch with animals, and
Yeah.
you get to appreciate them. And can I ask you, like, okay, so you went to a dog meat farm when she rescued these dogs, and how many dogs were rescued, and what did you witness during
So
that
when
visit?
the dogs I got, they were more, I guess how we would keep backyard chickens.
Yeah.
These were
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
backyard dogs. And
Okay.
so, I remember one of the areas where we got some dogs. I thought initially there was 3, but when we got there, we found 5.
Mm.
And it was a farm, and next to the building was this cage. And it wasn't very big. So the cages were probably 3 foot by 3 foot. And
Okay.
I remember going along this road, and it was right by the side of the road, and
Mm.
there was no roof on these cages.
Ah,
So
okay.
these dogs would get rained on.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and then during, obviously, when the sun was high, they were scorching to death. They had
Yeah.
no shade, nothing.
Oh.
And obviously they're living in this little area, they're defecating there.
Yeah.
And I kind of went up to this farm building, and there was no one there.
Hmm.
These dogs, the ones that I could see, had no food. They had no water.
Wow.
They were just in a mess. One of the dogs, which really stood out to me, was chained up. It wasn't in a cage, but it was chained up. And this dog got on its back legs and went like this with its front paws. And it was a real, call for help.
Yeah.
And so I found some, I guess it was like an old roofing panel or something. And I dragged that and put it on top of the cage to try and offer them some shelter.
Yeah.
And then
Wow.
I took pictures of the place, knowing that I could, drop a pin,
Yeah.
and know the location. And yeah, I went back with Jenny, Kim, and Jake. And then when we got there, I thought there was 3 dogs, but there was 5. And around the corner, I'd not seen one of the dogs. He was chained up. And I really don't know what goes through these people's minds. They must be mentally ill. They chained this dog up to a balcony. So we're on the ground floor, and there was a first floor balcony.
Yeah.
So the dog was chained up to that balcony, but the chain was so tight the dog couldn't lay down.
Oh my God. Okay. Wow.
So the
That's
dog,
horrible.
couldn't, the dog could sit down but couldn't quite lay down.
And we don't know how long he had been like
Yeah.
that. Oh my
And you
God.
just think, what goes through these people's minds? Anyway,
This is sick. Yeah. Sick.
and then we managed to. Jenny Kim was incredible. We kind of went to the local municipal office.
Okay.
We managed to find out who owned
That
this
property.
farm, and they came over, and then Jenny Kim kind of negotiated with them, and they gave us the dogs, all of them.
Oh,
And it was
wow.
quite sad, really, because they kind of just said, we were going to eat that dog next. And that's where we got Kathy. one of the dogs was called Kathy, and if you look on my Instagram, you'll see a picture of her. She's, bleeding from the eyes.
Oh, wow.
And she was in a really bad state. So she was the dog that inspired my Canada trip. But yeah, it's very difficult on the dog farms. If the big dog farms,
Yeah.
they obviously have hundreds of animals.
Yeah.
And what do you do in that situation? Because where do you put 100 dogs?
No, that's it.
And then what do you do with the person who owns the farm? Because if you can even get those dogs,
yeah,
that's his way of making money.
yeah,
So if you could even get those dogs, he's just going to go and get more dogs and start
yeah.
breeding.
That's it. That's it.
So, that really, if you're going into big dog farms, Jenny has done that. But if you're going into these dog farms, big dog farms, you really need some serious planning and financial backing to do that.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
But the dogs I got, they were, typically by the side of the road in cages or on these farms, again, just kept as, a backyard animal to consume.
But what's strange about that is that it was during your journey, right, on the kick scooter that you happened to see that, and then you investigated further. So that means that farm was like kind of abandoned. Like no one was actively looking after these dogs. They were just living somewhere else and going to check on them here and there, type of thing.
Yeah, I guess I guess the story was, they had this farm, and then people would give them these dogs, and they would say, yeah, we'll take them, and
was it like to consume themselves, or would they sell the dogs, or you're
a
not
little
sure?
a little bit of both.
Yeah.
Each situation's unique, and so typically, if I'd see a dog by the side of the road in a cage, and I could see obviously who was there, the owner, and I'd say, okay, will you give me the dog? And typically they'd say, yeah, okay, it'll cost $50.
Right.
And what I kind of learned later on was that, is obviously the dog meat price. And so you would have dog meat traders who would go round.
Yeah.
So either these people would consume the dogs themselves, or they would keep the dog and then sell it to a dog trader. And so, you could get $50 to $100 a dog.
Yeah.
And then, so each situation was unique. But typically where I got the dogs from were just small, a couple of dogs at each location.
Yeah.
Hey, this is Rich the Vegan. You might have seen my video of me traveling across Korea on a scooter, saving dogs along the way. Well, those dogs are in Canada now, and they're looking for their forever home. So if you could adopt Kathy, Jake, Buddy or Bear, please message me. And if you can't adopt, then please think about sponsoring these dogs. And if you can't sponsor, then just share the post, because you never know. These dogs deserve a second chance at life, and they deserve someone to love them.
Yeah.
But I did go past the big dog farms, and that was particularly harrowing. Once I'm sure if I went and did that trip and was not vegan and was not interested in dogs, I'd probably come away and say, yeah, that was a really beautiful trip through the countryside. But when you start to see these dog farms, and they're typically hidden away, and they will have, high fencing, so you can't see in.
Yeah.
But you can tell it's a dog farm, and you can hear the dogs, and
you can smell them too. I hear
everything.
Like the stench is pretty bad because these dogs defecate in the cage, and like it piles up. No one really cleans them.
No.
Yeah.
And then you can hear them being killed. I remember one night.
Oh my God.
The sun was going down, and I didn't know where I was going to stay. And I went past this dog farm, and I could hear these dogs screaming. And again, it's such a, I have to live with that, and I guess I have to live with the fact I didn't do anything. And everything in me wanted to just, be that hero and just, kick down the gates and
Yeah.
run in there and grab the dog meat trader and, just beat him to a pulp
Yeah.
and, set these dogs free. But then, ultimately, when I talk to people about this, they said, yeah, but you'd lose because you'll get arrested, you'll get put in
Yeah,
prison.
that's it.
Those
You
dogs will
become the
still be
bad
there.
guy. Suddenly you're the bad guy.
Those
And
dogs will still get killed.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that night, particularly when I went past this big dog farm, and I just kind of, I just pushed on through the night because I just couldn't, I couldn't stop. I was so wound up,
Yeah.
and it's hard. I have to try and live with that I didn't do anything, and that's tough. That's one of the things. The Korean trip was emotionally one of the hardest things I've ever done, and
Yeah.
it comes with a lot of guilt, to know that, yeah, I saved a couple of dogs, but those thousands that I didn't save, and that's tough. It's tough.
But can I ask you, like, you need to make peace with that, right? So, I mean, I would make peace with it in this way because it's a massive problem. It's that one person alone, especially a foreigner, cannot solve this problem. And so it's like that also for undercover investigators. I mean, like Kevin, he witnessed it in front of his own eyes. He did not stop it. And often people are like, well, I could never watch that and not stop it. But then you're like, it would defeat the purpose. The whole purpose is to expose the issue. So if you're going out there to be a hero, well, that's one thing. You're not going to make a difference. Whereas if you're documenting this for a purpose, and it's going to go somewhere and it's going to make laws happen. I mean, that's the attitude you have to adopt. And so, I hope you don't have that guilt anymore because chances, for one thing, you've done more as a single person than most people have for decades, so I think you have nothing but, to pat yourself on the shoulder. I mean, you've done amazing work and you've brought the issue to the forefront of many people that didn't know about it. So you've only done good, so you can only be, grateful for your time there and what you've done. It's really amazing, It took a lot of courage.
Yeah, I wish I'd have been braver in some aspects, as we talked about. And yeah, I don't know how to make peace with that. It's something that I think I'll live with forever. And
it's normal. I mean, it's like PTSD, right? So like it's very traumatic to see this, to witness it firsthand and to be there and to feel like, oh man, I wasn't able to help them,
It's funny because, when I was doing the trip, as you go along this route, it's quite a famous route for cyclists.
Yeah.
And you get as you go along. And I remember from that night, I stopped collecting, because if you get all the stamps, I thought, well, this is evidence to prove that I did it.
Yeah.
And you get this medal, you send off, you get this medal. And I remember from that point of seeing that dog farm, I just stopped collecting the stamps because I said, I don't want any praise or reward for that because it was just very horrific. And I remember when I got back, I guess I was very upset. And I remember there's a scene in Schindler's List where at the end of seeing the movie, Schindler, played by Liam Neeson, he's kind of looking around at the Jewish workers at his factory that he saved. And he's saying, I didn't save enough. And he's looking at his gold pin or his gold ring, and he's saying, this would have been enough. And that really stuck out to me when I came back to Canada. I remember, walking around and I'd see people and they'd have, a ski-doo, or they'd have this giant trailer, or, they'd be walking around with their dog. And, I remember thinking, if I had more money, or, if these people donated, or if these people, realized what was going on, if I could get more money, how many lives could I have saved extra?
Yeah.
And it's a really odd thing to think about, to see the money that we waste here.
Oh
And to
God,
think,
I know.
$50 or $100
Yeah,
could,
it's horrible. It's
you could set
horrible.
a dog up for life.
Yeah.
And then it was after that really I owe a huge debt of gratitude to Trey Moreau.
Yes.
We're both Christians, and I met him in a Christian group.
Oh,
Christian
that's
vegan group.
cool. I'm Christian too.
Nice.
Yeah.
And so I was at a real low point, I guess. And Trey, I kind of posted online that I'd done this trip, and Trey was an editor, professional editor, and he reached out to me and said, "Hey, are you going to make this into a little movie clip, And I said, "I don't know how to do that." I said, "I've got lots of videos that I took on my phone."
Yeah.
And so he said, "Send it all to me." And so
Oh, wow.
he made that video, and then we posted that online, and obviously it got a really huge reception.
Yeah.
I
So
can't remember how
then
many people.
I guess what do you call it? You did end up promoting the trip and all the work that you had done. And yes, I found it. So I will be posting the link in the description box below for everyone to go see. It's very beautiful. It's a short little film of your journey in South Korea. And also Trey is a part of your life, because, now your second trip, which was in 2019, and you baptized it Kathy's Tale, because you mentioned Kathy before. She was rescued with the help of Jenny Kim, and you actually adopted her, I believe.
Yeah, so she came to Canada. She's one of the dogs that we brought to Canada.
Yeah.
And so I actually named her after one of my friends, Kathy.
Okay.
But obviously, me and Kathy then became a couple after that.
It's a special name for you. Very significant.
So, but yeah, we brought Kathy, the dog came back, and she was doing well, and then it just became evident she wasn't well, and we were going to adopt her out.
Yeah.
And then she just wasn't well, and I guess the toll of just being left to rot in that cage had taken effect on her body. And I remember we were back and forward to different vets trying to find out what was wrong, and then eventually, and it's expensive, it's thousands and thousands.
Oh, yeah, big deal.
And eventually, one of the vets kind of really helped us and did an ultrasound, and then he just said, this is the end. And so we I kind of just get a bit emotional here, but we gave her a really nice send-off. So we had her on my bed, and then took her out to see the sunset over the Rocky Mountains and take for a walk. And so she had a really beautiful send-off, and then she passed away in my arms.
Oh my God.
It was very, very hard, that was, because you rescue a dog from a cage,
yeah,
and then you feel like you should be the protector of that dog.
Yeah.
You want to fight the world to save this dog.
Yeah.
And anyway, I couldn't, obviously, but I remember, she passed away in my arms.
Oh, wow.
And the last thing she did was just kind of raise her head and just look me in the eyes. And but that she, I guess, then became the inspiration to do the Canada trip, which was to try and I guess do something in her name, so that she wasn't just a dog in a cage.
Yeah. She left her legacy lives on. through you as well. But can you say, like, was it just like organ failure? Like, was it cancer, or was
Yeah,
just...
she just she had she was basically bleeding
internally?
internally, and she, when they did the ultrasound, they just found out that, yeah, all her organs were failing. At one point her stomach had twisted,
Oh
so
my
they
God.
sorted that out, but then when they did the ultrasound they found out that basically, yeah, her organs were failing, and she just, again, just, you can't leave a living being in a cage
No,
for
and
how many years.
what they feed them as well is very detrimental to their health. I mean, they feed them, garbage waste essentially.
Garbage.
Yeah. And how long was she with you? Like, from the moment you rescued her in South Korea, like she was with you for how many, was it years or?
No. She was only, so when I got back in 2018,
Yes. Okay.
she flew over, and then with some other dogs.
Yeah.
So it was literally just, a couple of months
Okay.
that she was at my house.
Wow.
I guess I take some solace in the fact that she was out of the cage.
Yes, exactly.
She was able to run around a garden. She was able to play with other dogs.
It was heaven for her. I mean, honestly, you gave her the life she always deserved. So obviously Kathy passes away, and I don't know how long after that did you decide to do the second scooterathon, and this time in Canada, which is a big difference between South Korea and Canada. We're talking about 4,000 plus miles. So what inspired you to do this, and what was the objective this time as opposed to when you were in South Korea?
It sounds less in miles. It sounds better if you say kilometers.
Okay.
In kilometers,
how many?
It's 6,400.
Oh yeah. Okay, let's
sounds way better. If you say kilometers, it's way better.
Oh yeah. No, but it's epic. I mean, come on. I would, like, somebody would tell me I'm gonna do this, I'd say you're crazy. Like, it's insane. Like, I don't know how you did this, but I guess you were inspired to try to make another, like, raise awareness. Was that also the goal? Yeah.
It was on my mind. I like going across things, and so it was on my mind. I was like, well, what could I do? And I was thinking maybe Canada. And then obviously with Kathy dog, it kind of became, I had a good reason to now, and I could do it in her honor. So yeah, she passed away obviously, and then just the next year, so obviously this was 2018.
Yeah.
And then April 2019 I was doing Canada. And I guess, as we mentioned before, I'm quite stubborn, which sometimes is good, but sometimes it's very bad. And but if I set my mind on something, then I have to achieve that goal.
Yeah.
And so once I kind of said, yeah, I'm going to do Canada, again, I didn't initially start to promote it much, because I didn't want to, again, promise something and then for whatever reason not be able to achieve it. But in my mind, I always knew, I would do it or I would die doing it.
Okay.
Hey, this is Rich the Vegan. Hopefully you saw my video last year of me traveling across Korea on a scooter. That was a trip of over 600 kilometers, and I did that to raise awareness for animals. During that trip, I saw a lot of dogs that were in terrible conditions, and I managed to team up with a rescue group, and we saved quite a lot of dogs. Many of them have found homes in America and Canada, and that is just wonderful. It's a new year. There's a new trip planned, and this time it's in honor of one of my rescue dogs, Kathy. She came from Korea to Canada, and she was only here a short while, and unfortunately she didn't make it. So I want this trip to be in her memory. And I want her memory to inspire others and to show people that there are dogs suffering, there are animals suffering, and we can do something about this. I want to thank everyone for their support. The Korea video got over 70,000 views, and that is amazing. Follow me, show your support if you can, and I'll see you out on the trail. Thank you.
And so, yeah, I kind of made the plan, and I guess I did everything wrong. It was funny because I said, right, I'm going to start on the East Coast and then go to the West Coast.
Yeah.
And I didn't, do any research or anything. And then I remember when I went to buy a waterproof jacket and some waterproof trousers, the gentleman in the shop, I guess he was a cyclist, and he said, you do realize, like, when people go across Canada, they go west to east because the wind is a westerly wind.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and then I didn't know that. And then he said also, the way it works is if you go west, you start in Vancouver, you go up to Rogers Pass,
Okay.
and then from Rogers Pass, which is the Continental Divide, you go all the way downhill to
it's easier.
yeah. So I said, oh, really? And he said, yeah. And I said, oh, but I'm leaving like tomorrow. So I was like, oh, so yeah.
Well, you did it the hard way. You really wanted to give it, good old try there, but you did it. You actually did this. And were you with Kathy, your now girlfriend, at that point? Yeah.
So me and Kathy were together, and I always say Kathy really did the hard work because she was left here looking after dogs.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah.
She had her own house and my house, and then a bunch of dogs to look after as well as working. And for me, so that was a lot of work for Kathy. Whereas for me, I was on this adventure, and even though it's hard,
yeah,
it was very different to Korea. Canada was more enjoyable, and as you said, I guess because we have welfare laws for animals,
yeah,
I didn't see such barbarity here. And so obviously it goes on, but it wasn't so in my face as Korea. Obviously Korea's a small country as well, so wherever you go you can see it. So for me, Canada was just about the physical part of it, whereas Korea was emotionally a lot tougher.
Yeah, that's true. That makes sense. But you started out in the East Coast, New Brunswick, or where were you?
Nova Scotia and Halifax.
Nova Scotia, Halifax. Yeah. Okay, my God. And so at one point, like, this lasted 4 months, we have to say, right? It took a little bit more.
It was supposed to take 3 months. I thought, well, I'll do 100 kilometers, so 60 miles a day.
Okay.
Because I thought, well, with Korea, I was on a kid's scooter.
Yeah.
It was more, well, I guess adults can use it too, but, essentially the wheels are only this big, and I had a backpack with my stuff in. Yeah. And I thought, well, on this scooter, it's a bigger scooter, kind of looks like a bicycle, and I was able to put my bags on the scooter. So I didn't have that load on me.
That weight, yeah.
But then it kind of all went wrong because when I got to the East Coast, the weather was bad. It was windy.
The winds were against you.
The winds were against me. It's like, I always say, the Monty Python sketch where they go, yeah, we walked uphill both ways.
Yeah,
it was like that because I had the wind against me and I was going uphill. So every day, you would finish higher than when you started. So on a scooter, that's not a good thing because you have push all the time. But those early days, I didn't get very far because the wind, and a lot of the locals I spoke to in Nova Scotia and New Brunswick said, yeah, we've like, this is historic wind events. You know, we've got gales.
Oh my God, just happened to be that year.
So it was really tough. But at the beginning, you know, there was a lot of great people who helped me at the beginning. And
Yeah.
I remember I was eating a sandwich at a rest stop, and there was a bunch of Mounties, the RCMP officers there.
Yeah.
And I think I looked fairly presentable at this point because I just started the trip. But
Yeah.
it's still unusual. So one of the police officers came over and said, you know, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And he kind of got his notepad out, you know, and I said, well, am I in trouble?
Oh.
I said, you know, and then we had a laugh. And so I told him what I was doing, and he said, you know, hold on a minute. And so then he went off and then came back.
Okay.
And he said, yeah, my wife, you know, does a lot of work for rescue dogs.
Oh.
And he said, you can come and stay with us tonight. So he said, just call me.
Wow.
He said, wherever you stop, call me and I'll pick you up. And he did. So
nice.
I just carried on.
Yeah.
And then he drove that night to pick me up, brought me back. Just amazing people. They weren't vegan. You know,
But
and
they were, his wife was doing kind of a she had a dog shelter or
no,
more?
so she had started a coffee company, and so she was donating to local charities and rescue organizations which were dogs. So I stayed with them for a couple of nights. So they'd drop me off where they picked me up.
Oh, yeah. Okay, at least they would bring you back. Yeah.
And then they would pick me up, bring me back home, and then in the morning, incredible.
Wow.
Yeah, and that was a theme, I guess, along the Canada, going across Canada.
Yeah.
Was I met so many amazing people, and the vast majority weren't vegan at all, but I guess what I was doing kind of resonated. And I remember this couple who I stayed with at the beginning, Ryan and Trina, they really kind of spurred me on, because it was right at that point when it was really bad winds, you know.
Yeah, like to the point that you might go, this was a bad idea. Let me go back, you know.
Yeah. They really kind of said, you know, you can do this, you can do it.
But, you know, so like, were you documenting your trip while doing it, like on social media at that point, or were you just keeping it quiet and more like under the radar and then promoting it later after the fact?
So I was putting up pictures online on Facebook and Instagram. I'm not very techie, I guess. So I kind of did what I did. But Trey was a big help. So Trey, whether he wants to or not, he kind of became my videographer. So I would
totally
send him these videos, and you know, I wasn't paying him. He just made these videos, and
wow. And he would post them for you, type of thing?
Yeah, so he would make the video and then send it to me, and then I'd post it, and then he would share it. Like, you know, I can't thank Trey enough. The amount of hours, the amount of hours that he's put in, for this is incredible. So what I would do is, as I did each province, I would post a video.
Oh, wow.
And then once I got past Quebec, it just started to become, the videos was just extreme. You know, like Ontario, that was a month's worth of videos.
Oh, yeah.
I guess it was just a lot for Trey to do, as well as his, you know, job working and doing everything.
Yeah, so it's not easy to juggle all of it. For sure.
So kind of the videos stopped after Quebec, and then Trey came up with the idea of trying to put all of these videos together to make a longer
kind of... Well, I think that's great, you know, because will get to all watch it, like I wasn't there on social media in 2019. Yeah, okay, I was on social media at that point because I was late. I was never on social media until May 2018, and it's when I heard about the Yulin Dog Meat Festival, strangely enough. For a lot of people, hearing about the dog meat trade makes them go vegan eventually. And for me, I was already vegan, but it made me into an animal rights activist. That was the thing for me. And it awoken me to all the other animal rights issues, of course. I was not like blind to it, but I was not part of it, like it was just not part of my life. I was like carrying on like most people. I was an artist, it was not, something that I was as passionate about as I am today. Yeah. And so this friend of yours, Trey Morrow, he's making this into a full-length documentary film called Pushing for Hope. And there is a trailer available. Yes. And so I'm going to post a link to that. But do you have any idea when this is going to be released? Or I guess the pandemic kind of put a dent in.
It did, yeah. We were trying to aim for obviously 2020. Yeah. And we thought maybe we could send it to some film shows. Yeah. But then a lot of things got cancelled. And then just the sheer work involved, the film's not just, to have one person trying to edit a film, when you watch a film, when you see the credits, there's hundreds of people involved. So, yes. Trey's doing it all on his own. So, really, whenever Trey can do it, it's, for me, it would be nice to see a film, but it's not, ultimately, I think people can see what I've done, and there's enough videos out there.
And you have a website also. Yeah, so obviously the link to your website will be posted, and people go visit because it's a good resource of a lot of information. And so, yes, the film is like a little icing on the cake, if you will. And so eventually when Trey can manage, but you're right, a film takes so long, and it always takes longer than you expect. And I know I'm part of a film, I play a very small role, but one filmmaker that's actually here locally, she's doing a film about the ag laws. That were passed in Ontario, and I think in BC or two other provinces, in Alberta and another province. And basically, it's not just about that, but it's really kind of following an animal rights activist, a farm investigator, on her journey. And it's taking her, she thought it would be done already. But it takes always longer. It's, when you have to coordinate with other people, interviews, it's always long. So I said, please don't put yourself a deadline, because the chances are you won't meet it. Just do the film. And when it happens, it happens. And, it's a project that's dear to your heart, of course, but it's hard, especially when you're juggling a full-time job and everything else that life brings our way. So this second, epic mile journey, what would you say? Like, I know you stopped along the way and visited some farms, some farm sanctuaries, I should say. I don't know if you visited farms as well. Like, can you tell us about certain highlights? Because it's 4 months, 4 months out of your life. So
it's 4 months, and I had to be careful. I couldn't visit a lot of places. Just because of the time frames involved, and also getting to these places. When you're on a scooter and you've got to push with your foot, every mile counts. And also at the time of the year I did it, obviously started in April. A lot of places were still, a lot of sanctuaries were still closed. And they were doing their kind of their spring cleanup. But I did when I was in New Brunswick. A wonderful woman, she'd rescued a pig called Clover.
Oh, so, I saw the pictures. Yeah, so cute.
Picked me up and we went and visited Clover. And I stayed with people. When I was in Ontario, I stayed with this lovely couple. They own a vegan store called Compass Foods, and they've rescued a pig, and the pig lived with them in their house.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that was pretty amazing, staying with them and just seeing their dream and seeing the different forms of activism. You don't, what I do is kind of more, I guess, physically based.
Yeah.
But to set up a business or selling, vegan food, or to set up a business and you're doing vegan yoga, or just being an activist and going out and doing vigils at slaughterhouses. I was able to meet a lot of different people and see the different forms of activism. For me, I guess with my activism, I guess was aiming it at men predominantly, because I'm a man. And I wanted to try and show that you don't have to be special. I'm slightly overweight. I'm getting older. I'm 42 this year. And I just wanted to show that, you can be a regular guy who works a blue collar job. But you can still have compassion for animals, and you can still be a very caring individual. And so this trip, I really didn't do much training for it. I just kind of started and did it and thought, well, the body will adapt. And
did it adapt? I mean, I can imagine that you were quite sore after this journey. And what comes to mind is that a kick scooter, it creates an imbalance because you're always pushing with one leg and the other one's kind of resting, as far as I know. And so it must create back problems. Like, are you having some aftermath from this challenge that you took on? Because that's huge, like 4 months of doing this in crazy weather. It must have had an impact on you physically.
I lost a lot of weight. I mean,
that's a positive, I guess.
Looking at the beginning, I kind of got my chubby cheeks, and then if you look at the end,
they all dissipated.
Because and the part of that as well was that I just couldn't eat. There was a lot of places where obviously I couldn't get anything that was vegan. So as I was going along, I was having to stop at gas stations or small convenience, and then you'd be like, okay, I can get some bread, and then you go in, and then you'll have like a couple of pieces of bread, and then you pick it up and you read it and go, oh, it's got milk in it. Why has this got milk in?
Man,
There was often times where I just wasn't eating much. But here's a very interesting thing. I never got cramp. I never got any of that, and a lot of that I think was just because of being vegan. I met a load of cyclists who were coming the opposite way. They were doing the easy way, and this gentleman, he, I guess, had problems with his legs. So he had a modified bike where he was able to use his hands.
Okay.
And he had a support crew with him. So they had a couple of RVs, and then he had some outriders. And I remember as I was going along, I'd meet other cyclists, and they'd say, oh, you got to see this guy. He's going to be coming your way. And I remember one lunchtime, I did. So I went over and introduced myself, and we had this really great chat. And they had, physiotherapists who give them massages. And I said, I'm carrying all my own stuff. I was like, I don't even stretch.
Oh, wow.
And
did he hook you up with a good massage?
No. They did hook me up with some of his t-shirts and socks.
Oh, wow.
But I really attribute that to being vegan, was that I didn't get, cramps. I think generally I was in okay condition. There was a period there where, I was pushing really hard. Where I was, especially through Ontario, where I was doing 100, 120 kilometers a day, which up and down hills is a lot.
Yeah.
And I had to do that just because I didn't have any food. And I think internally that took a big toll on me.
Yeah.
Just, when I talked to other cyclists, I'd find out I was actually going further than they were, and I
Oh,
was just
wow.
foot. But I was able to change legs. You do change legs.
Oh, okay. So that, because for me in my head, I'm like, oh, my back is hurting already. It's quite the feat, because it's not like a bicycle. It is a little bit, like more difficult, like to,
On a
yeah,
bicycle, you've got mechanical advantage. So
yeah,
obviously with the bike, you're using the gearing to get you going.
yes,
With a
exactly.
scooter, you literally push with your foot, and the energy you put in is how far you go, and obviously the
Yeah.
wind and the incline affect it. But yeah, so I kind of, my right leg was my power leg, and then
Okay.
my left leg was like my cruising leg.
Okay, if we're just cruising on by, we'll switch gears. But I can't imagine. Do you still own the scooter?
Yeah, so I've got it in the garage here.
Oh, yeah. It's like a trophy in a way.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
uh,
Me and that scooter, we built up a good, relationship. It was my friend for four
yeah,
months, and it's funny. Going across Canada as well really opens your eyes to a lot of things.
yeah.
And I remember when I first landed in Canada, that first year was quite difficult, and I ended up homeless.
Oh,
But
wow.
I had a van, and I remember, you know, always thinking, well, I don't have a home, but I have a van, and I can shut the van door,
Yeah,
and I'm in my van.
yeah.
And when I was on the scooter, I met a lot of homeless people,
Oh,
and
wow.
I would meet different people who were migrating across the country.
Hmm.
They probably had personal issues,
Yeah.
different reasons. And I remember one gentleman, I saw him a couple of days. Uh, he was just walking, um, and he was just sleeping rough. And I remember thinking, how lucky am I where I've got this scooter, and I've got a tent, and I've got a sleeping bag, and I've got my
Yeah.
credit card. And, even if things get so bad, I
Yeah.
can stop. I can, get a motel.
Yeah.
And so it really made me think about people and what other people go through. And
Yeah.
it really made me reflect on the animals, because, as I said, I can stop. I can say enough's enough today, I'm
Yeah.
tired.
Yeah.
But the animals can't. And
Mm.
so it was very, again, it was a very reflective experience for 4 months, to see the things that I had, and to
Yeah.
think about other people, and to think about animals.
Wow. And I didn't ask you in South Korea, what was the response of locals? Was it overall positive? Like, were people encouraging you to keep going in South Korea, as opposed to Canada? You said people were pretty much on board, obviously, being a dog loving country. Yeah.
In Korea, I didn't, obviously there was a language barrier there,
Yeah.
but also, um, I wasn't reaching out as much.
Oh,
And so,
yes. Yeah, it was
so in
more of
Korea,
a,
um, it was kind of a lonely experience.
yeah.
Um,
Thank God it was
uh,
only 14 days, not 4 months, because that
yeah,
could drive someone crazy to be that isolated for such an extensive period of time. So,
yeah. But
yeah.
there were moments when I would meet great people, and I remember one day I was going over a bridge that was connected to a dam, and I
Okay.
went inside, and I probably looked homeless, like I looked very disheveled. And, but these wonderful Korean people who work there
Yeah.
came and gave me some water, and they really took care of me. And then the boss, the manager, he came down. He spoke English.
Oh, wow.
What an amazing gentleman! So he he then, as we spoke, said, okay, let me know where you're going to stay and I'll take you out. So he did. He came and picked me up.
Oh, wow.
And he took me way off into the country to a traditional Korean restaurant, which again is vegan. It's funny, a lot of their traditional food
Is plant-based.
yeah, majority plant-based.
Yeah.
And he did that out of kindness for me. He didn't have to
Wow.
drive all that way.
No.
But what he did do as well, which was interesting, was after I'd left, so I saw him say at lunchtime. As I'd been scooting, I then that evening found 2 dogs. And
Wow.
when I met him, I said, look, can you drive me back to these dogs? I want to give them some food and water. And he did. And then he actually spoke to the owners. So yeah, what an incredible man. So I guess wherever you go, and he wasn't vegan,
No.
but wherever you go, you do see these people who have such kindness.
Yes. That's good to know. Because, being an animal rights activist, you often see the dark side of people, the cruel side of people, and it becomes a little bit overwhelming sometimes, like to the point that I often say, I hate humans. And that's not a healthy place to be, like in your mind. It's not a positive place to work from. So I'm always happy when I meet people that have the same kind of heart and compassion for all living beings. And, we have to remind ourselves that most people, and Kevin is good at that. He always says that people are inherently good. And, if you appeal to that side of them, I think people will change. They do change, once they become informed. Often the case is, like you said, the farming industry is very good, animal agriculture industry, I should say, very good at hiding, what they do. And so preventing the public from knowing what goes on, because they know that if people would be aware of the conditions of these animals, that chances are they wouldn't consume their products, and, it would hit their profits. And, people are very much attached to their profits, unfortunately. But it's good that you got to meet all these different kinds of people, and be them vegan or non-vegan, that you saw something common in all of them, is that they were kind and very supportive of what you were doing. And I'm sure a lot of people didn't know about the dog meat trade, so speaking to them, they got to become aware of this issue, and probably enlisted some new supporters for nonprofits working in those countries. So, it's like the work that you did keeps on giving, so I applaud you.
I mean, like with Kevin, with my conversations with Kevin, and I guess my ignorance and stupid comments to Kevin, his demeanor, his way of presenting things to me, because he was always open to the questions. He didn't come across in an attacking way.
No.
And so that does have an impact. So you never know. I mean, hopefully the people I've met, if they're not vegan, maybe it does one day chime a chord, and whether that's me or whether they meet someone else. And, eventually 10 people down the line, maybe then something clicks in them. I hope.
To the point, like, you met these people, they knew you were doing it in honor of your dog Kathy, and about the industry that goes on in South Korea. And then they found out that you're vegan. You're not the typical vegan in most people's minds. So I'm sure that you open their minds. I'm sure it has like a lasting effect, a lasting impression, I would say. And you never know. I think bottom line, as an activist, and I will ask you what you recommend, but I think it's become apparent to me that, with people, You know, if it's one-on-one outreach, I think you're better off being just kind and informing people. Like just, I hate to say educating because it sounds like it's a bit patronizing, but it's more about sharing your experiences. Like, why am I vegan? This is why, and, giving them room to ask questions and to be receptive. I think there's a much better chance that you'll, convert them than if you're like bashing them and going, don't you know this? You should know better. And, like that kind of attitude doesn't go anywhere. And I'm all for being aggressive, like more aggressive tactics with corporations that profit, from animal exploitation, like Canada Goose. I'll be the first one to protest and be loud and in your face. That's a corporation. But, an individual, I don't think you win with that attitude. Would you agree?
Yeah, I guess I've been that aggressive vegan and the annoying vegan, and I probably still am sometimes, but I guess it's about evolving, and I've been to vigils, I've done outreach on the streets, not a lot, but I've done it. And you know what? I respect the people who do that. For me, whenever I'd go, there would always be a negative experience. And so people would get triggered. And I remember one night we were doing a cube of truth.
Yeah.
Gravy. And a guy came out the gym, where I was in the cube, you got your mask on. It's the way that's set up is you have to go to them. No one's coming to you.
No, that's right. Yeah.
But he came out of his way, threw coffee over everyone, got in the face of some of the people there, was swearing at them.
Okay.
Calling women bad words. And you think, that happened a few times. And I remember one time when we were doing a bit of a vigil for some cows that, I guess I got in a scuffle where one of the truck drivers pushed me and the police were there. And, I came away from that experience. It's funny because I had such a bad experience there with the police that night.
Yeah.
But then I was still the same person, but doing slightly different activism. Police were inviting me into their homes. And so it never sat right with me. And I came away from the activism and I said, there's certain forms of activism. I respect the people who do it because it takes a lot of courage and bravery. But I said, certain forms of activism align with certain people. And I think for me, I guess I kind of align for more doing these physical things. And again, as I said, it was to try and show that I'm just an average guy with an average job. And I really wanted to show that you can be vegan, and especially as a man, because it seems, I don't know what the numbers are, but again, I'm going to say majority of vegans are probably ladies.
Yeah. I probably think that's true. Yeah.
Or, on my trip, I'd often meet vegan women and they'd say, I just wish he'd go vegan, and he couldn't see it. And so that was who I was trying to reach, was these people. I took some criticism, but I like firearms. I like shooting, target shooting.
Yeah.
I like axe throwing. I like my chainsaws.
You're a man's man.
I don't know if I'm a man's man, but what I try to show is that a lot of the men, typically here as well in North America, like to hunt. And I said, when I talk with them and I break it down, a lot of it wasn't necessarily the killing, it was the experience of having the firearm, going out for the day into the mountains, getting that feeling, of shooting. And I can do all of that
and not kill. Not kill.
That was a big thing for me, was to try and show that you can still enjoy, axes, knives, guns, whatever it is. You can do your cycling. You can do. I've met weightlifters and bodybuilders who are vegan. It doesn't matter, as a man, it doesn't matter what you want to do.
Yeah.
you can do it, and you can do it with compassion in your heart and not have to kill anything. And that was a big thing for me. So I think for me, like you said, my activism took me more to trying to show that you can just be a regular guy and be vegan, and trying to do that through something physical, because I think it resonates with men
Yes, it
quite
does.
well.
Yeah.
And you are right, one-on-one, I think just being open and being accepting,
Yeah.
and I can still be that really aggressive, annoying vegan.
Yeah. In your face vegan.
But one thing that I've noticed is, since getting the sanctuary, we're surrounded by farmers. We're surrounded by ranches and cattle farms.
Yeah.
Now, by coming here, we've been open, and the help we've got has been from farmers. So we are, in many ways, we are diametrically opposed.
Yeah.
But they help us. We'll get support and we'll get help from farmers.
And in what respect are they helping you?
So, for example, obviously we've got horses here.
Yeah.
And a couple of weekends ago, there were some horses in the field opposite.
Okay.
So one of the cattle ranchers, I guess he drives by, to check on his cattle. He'd noticed there was some horses loose in a field.
Okay.
So he came and drove around our property and drove up to check on our horses, to make sure that our horses hadn't gotten out. So, it's those little acts where he didn't have to do that. He could have said, "Oh, well, if their horses that got out, they got out." He kind of made that effort to check that all horses were okay. And we'll have people who will donate us hay, or we'll have the other farmers come and check on us. They'll drive by and say, "Have you got enough feed? Do you need anything?"
So we're touching upon something that I'm not aware of. Like, you have a sanctuary.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know. Okay, so you and Kathy, that's what you do. You run the sanctuary.
So after the Canada trip, we came back from the Canada trip, and it seemed, I guess on the back of doing Korea and then Canada, me and Kathy talked about it, and we'd only been together a few months at this point. But we spoke about it, and we just said, the natural step is, if you're going to do this, you've got to kind of show through your actions. You can't just talk. You've got to actually physically with your actions and walk the walk. And so Kathy sold her house, I sold mine.
Okay.
And we bought a very rundown piece of land with a very tiny house on it, and we've been trying to put together a small kind of micro sanctuary. And so we have obviously got other rescue animals here now, because ultimately, if you're going to say you're doing something, you've got to dedicate your life to it. And so that's what we've done.
That's amazing. What is it called?
So it's called Bear. So we haven't put it on any social media.
Okay.
Really.
Not yet. It's still new. Yeah.
It's still new. So it's called Bear, and that stands for Burning Ember Animal Rescue. And the idea behind it was that if you imagine a campfire, and you've got that little ember that's just glowing. It's like a little glow of hope.
And then it becomes
a big fire. Yeah. So even for these animals that are, at the end and they've been through the fire, there's that little glow of hope. And also Bear stands for one of the rescue dogs from Korea called Bear. So
nice. Is he still with you, this dog?
Yeah, no one wanted him. It was really sad. So he was in a cage, and when I saw him, he kind of put his paws upon the cage,
Yeah.
and he had a little white fleck of hair,
Oh, wow.
and it looked like a Korean moon bear, so I named him Bear.
Okay.
But
That's
when
so
we
pretty.
brought him to Canada, no one really wanted him. He's a bit of a goofball. We think he has dwarfism, so
Okay.
he should be bigger,
Yeah.
but
He's like a small, compact.
yeah, his proportions aren't right. So his
Okay.
feet are big, his ears are big. He just looks funny.
Okay.
So
No
when we spoke,
takers for Bear. Oh my
no,
God.
he should be a big Jindo, but he's kind of compact and goofy. But he is such a loving being. He plays with the horses. He's good with the chickens, with the ducks, with the cat, everything, rabbits. He just wants to be friends with everyone.
And
so,
wow.
Yeah.
To think
So
of where he came from and now he's living the life with you. That's amazing.
Yeah, he was in a cage, and his brother called Buddy, he was in a cage next to him. So you see it with Bear. Buddy got adopted, a wonderful couple adopted Buddy here.
Okay.
But with Bear, you can see the residual trauma that he will sometimes go in circles. And what that is because in his little cage, he could only go in circles.
Oh, yeah.
So sometimes...
Yeah, I think bears that were in circuses as well, like, elephants, any animal that's been trapped for so long, they have this residual little pattern in their brain. Yeah, it's heartbreaking.
The bear does that. So there'll be, if he's waiting for something, or if gets excited for something, so if he's waiting for his dinner,
yeah,
the other dogs will just kind of sit there, or they may walk back and forward. What Bear will do is will just go in a circle, and I think you see that at different times. And again, I think it's that residual, like you said, pattern, that trauma. He just does the same circle that he did in his cage.
Well, it's true. It's been like, at this point, it's been 4 years. Well, not quite. Like, it's been 3 years, right? Like 2018. Now we're at the beginning of 2022. So, maybe. Do you know how old he is? Like, is he?
No, we don't know.
He was
no idea. Young. I think he was quite young when I got him.
Okay.
But yeah, we don't know the age of the dogs.
No.
Yeah, I don't know how old he is. He's going a bit grey like me now. So.
Well, it's gonna look good on him, like it looks good on you. So I guess we're gonna wrap things up, because I've extended my time with you quite a bit. I guess I could keep talking to you forever. But just a few questions left that I would love to ask you is okay, we covered that. Okay, I'm just gonna end it with like some fun questions that I came up with today. So if you don't, I'm sure you won't mind answering. It's a fun question for me because talking to another vegan, because some of my guests are not necessarily vegan, I always like to know, what was your pre-vegan favorite dish or a food that you loved before you became vegan? And have you found an acceptable substitute as a vegan?
I'm not really a big foodie. I kind of eat anything.
Oh yeah, food's not big on your agenda.
As long as it's not spicy.
Okay.
So when I lived on my own, I would just cook a pot of pasta, and I'd eat that same pasta for every meal all week.
Oh my God.
Cold. So yeah, food's not a big one. One thing I do miss though is Mars bars. So in Britain,
I like Mars too.
Yeah, and I always remember I would eat those at my grandmother's, and I just can't.
It's like a childhood memory thing.
Yeah, I haven't found a vegan alternative to that, which is a shame because I'm sure you could do it vegan.
I'm sure, because something I always loved was the Reese's peanut butter cups.
Yes.
And they do have amazing vegan substitutes, so I always relish in those. They're expensive, but I'm like, I deserve it. I work hard for a living, I'll treat myself. So okay, so my final question would be, do you have any guest suggestions for me? Because the podcast, although it is primarily focused on the dog cat meat trade, in 2022, I'm going to have some guests that are going to talk about different other animal rights issues. So it could be either related to dog meat trade or other animal rights issues. I don't know if you saw that question ahead of time and you gave it some thought, or
no. I'd tell you who would be really good is a couple called Dan and Sean, and they run a site called the Indian Rock Vegans. They're based out of British Columbia.
Okay.
And what is very unique about them is Dan was in the RCMP, so he was a Canadian Mountie.
I think I know who you're talking about. I think I do. Yeah.
And he had stage 4 cancer.
Oh,
and
wow. Yeah.
John, she is, I guess, the impetus that started them on their plant-based diet.
Yeah, I think I know. I think I know them, but that would be great. And if I'm not mistaken, he's the one who's helped. You must know Amy Serrano.
Yeah, I don't know her, but I know what she's done.
Yeah.
So that's why I think they're both in a unique position, because Sean is an amazing cook, so she's a foodie. She
totally
amazing meals, and she's gone through a real weight loss journey, and she describes that through going plant-based and how her health improved. And then Dan, obviously, he's cured his cancer through going vegan.
That's amazing. Yeah.
What I think is also interesting about Dan is not only do him and Sean have the physical benefits, but also Dan has the knowledge of being a police officer. And so he has given some great speeches at some events where he's targeted it at the police officers who are there at this event. And he is some of the things he says, I cannot believe that those police officers don't go home and think about what he said, because he was in their position
it's good that he was in that position, because it can definitely influence others. So that's a great suggestion. Thank you so much. And but I was thinking, is there anyone that you still are in contact with in Korea that's an activist whose English would be good enough to be on a podcast? I asked because so far I've gone some headway into getting Chinese activists on my podcast, which was very challenging, because most of them, it's very difficult to, because my questions are elaborate. And I can shorten them, I can make it different, but the language barrier was always the problem. And especially in China, they don't want to be seen talking negatively about their country. So I figure Korea would be a better chance, of someone.
So there's a few people there. Maybe what I could do is, before I say their names, maybe I could reach out to them to see what they're comfortable with.
Of course. Don't need to name anyone right now. I don't want to put you on the spot, but
because I'll ask them, because there's a couple of people. There's a gentleman who is a Korean Australian. So
wow.
He's obviously bilingual fluently.
Wow.
In both English and Korean. And he lives in Korea. But then there's obviously other activists who
I can't hear you.
Activists who are still very heavily involved.
Okay.
And I think maybe I should check with them first
Yes.
to see how comfortable they would be. But yeah, I can definitely send you a list of people.
Okay.
But I'll reach out to them first, and then at least you've got some people to talk with them.
Because I find it so important to speak to actually people who live there, right? Who are from that country, but it's not easy to get often because of the language barrier. Unfortunately, I don't speak Korean. I wish I did. And you speak a little bit, eh?
Tiny bit, not well enough. And that's another one really of an area that I've got to improve on, is that I can order food and I can kind of say how much is this, and I need someone to stand. But really, I really struggle when I follow a lot of people online, and I really struggle because I can read the words, but I don't necessarily know what the words mean, or I get confused. And it can mean something completely different. So that's an area that I really
it's part of my
busy, but it's an area where I need to. I have the books. I guess I'm old-fashioned. I've got books, so I just need to somehow
find the time and everything that you do. It's a question. That's why I say it's a retirement plan. For me. Because it's a project for my retirement for sure, but I'm hoping I can probably pick up a language before then. I mean, there's some great programs out there. So are you able to say something like goodbye in Korean for us?
I don't know. I suddenly feel very shy.
Okay. Well, don't be shy, Rich. We heard your whole life story at this point. There's no need to be shy. Just a little something.
감사합니다.
Okay, what does that mean?
It just means thank you.
Oh, can you say it again?
감사합니다. I can say it here. I guess I'll just say, I'll say it this way. I just want to thank all the Korean activists who dedicate their life, their personal safety, and everything they have financially to these dogs. So, 정말 감사합니다.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love this. It's a perfect way to end the podcast. So thank you, Rich, for your time. You've been so generous. And definitely when I'll keep in touch with you, and when your sanctuary is up and running, there's a website. We'll definitely want to share that as well. So
thank you so much.
Hey, you are fantastic, and I thank you very much. And obviously, I'll let you know when the podcast will be published.
Of course, yeah, and then I'll share it and put it on the website and my Facebook and Instagram as well.
Thank you, because I'm not really on Instagram, so I'll appreciate the Instagram post. Thank you so much, Rich. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.